a support group. So,
And I think he connected with you as a result of this project.
yes, it was, I will thank Jody. There's many wonderful people that give great suggestions, and we actually listen to a lot of suggestions, and things come forth as a matter of fact. One thing I want to say, many of you have heard about the Tiger Team. Some of you who are neighborhood councils have actually seen the Tiger Team at work. The Tiger Team researches and looks into potential ideas, documents, and brings those issues up to the different agencies such as the City of Los Angeles, Metro, MetroLink, and sometimes we get changes or repairs going. One example is that Manuel and me were in Sacramento yesterday, and we went and saw our local assembly members and state senators to talk about the fact that there's lack of sidewalks in Sylmar, and therefore Guide Dogs of America, you can't get off the bus there, you can't use the bus. No sidewalks, the bus route goes right by, but it's not usable. There's other intersecting bus routes that don't have sidewalks because they were put in after Americans with Disability Acts. And as a matter of fact, it was our city council member that was so kindly put, they didn't know how to do their job. They actually wrote me after a couple months of ignoring my letter and said, "How do you do this?" And that's Council District 7 if you want to guess who it is. But meanwhile, we have a new assembly member there who many of the Cal State Northridge students had. It's Raul Bocanegra. He's an urban planner. And I described what the issue was to him in about 20 seconds. He said, safe routes to schools. So we're working on seeing where safe routes to schools, which is, I guess, a federal program with some state mandates, how we can get some of that moving along. The council member never even got this idea about fixing the sidewalks or anything into the preliminary budget or anything into the project queue. That's how bad it is. But we have a new council member coming in July 1st who works with the assembly member, and we will get some changes. One other thing the students did was one of our students would leave Cal State Northridge at 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, get down to the orange line with his bike. I'd get down to the orange line at night, and what would happen, this is for you, get down to the orange line at night, and 1 out of 4 times he would find that his bike didn't have accommodations on the bus, and he would stay there for another 20 minutes, and then the next bus had pulled off at Reseda, and no space, so he'd get a 3rd bus. So we made a proposal, we brought it before the first neighborhood council we went to was Mary Garcia's Midtown North Hollywood Neighborhood Council, and we explained it to them, and I believe they gave us approval at the committee level, but we were bad boys and didn't get it up to the big neighborhood council. Hey, how you doing? So what happened as a result of that is we had the report, we actually met with Metro staff, and we made some proposals. Turkey, it's the big staff. That's it. Here's yours right here. So we made some proposals. We gave them column A, column B, and column C. Column A was change the rules so you could bring a bike on the back of the bus inside the bus. Because many times after 7 o'clock at night, the buses have space. Column B was to get a retrofit where the back seats are by the back door, pull out some back seats and put up this other appliance that you could fit 3 bikes into the appliance, and there'd be dedicated space for the bikes, so you'd go from a bike rack with 3 in the front, 3 in the back by the back door, so you could double your bike capacity. And the 3rd option was increase the service. So we met with Metro, and about a month later we had an appointment, and they decided that with the bureaucracy, they're still working on what it's going to take to untangle the rules, because these rules are applied to 6,000 people, and you have to be real straight about rules. Number 2, the appliance situation. They were researching it, and actually I got somewhat of an answer this morning that there was a white paper written on the appliance situation, and they're still researching it. And as a result of that, that still could happen. I don't know what's on the white paper, but it's still working through staff. But the big announcement is that Orange Line service on June 23rd is going to increase from every 10 minutes of the daytime to every 8 minutes. So they're going to increase the service so bike riders won't be left behind. And at nighttime, night service is very hard to get. Their night service is going to go from 3 buses an hour to 4 buses an hour, which means every 20 minutes to every 15 minutes. So that 33% increase is going to have a lot of meaning. And the reality here is that the ridership continues to increase. We'll either get more service or the appliances will get put in, so there'll be space for bikes aboard. But either way, our pieces are winning. Our work is based on research, and whatever idea we may conceive, we may tell Metrolink we could figure out how to get $1,000 a day more ridership up in the Selmar station, and there's lots of tools that we can use to do it, but we're the dedicated team that will figure out the answer. If Metrolink wants to work with us, we have a project. So those are the ways that things work. Anyways, tonight we have, and that's what our Tiger team does out at Cal State Northridge. We have 15 interns, many of them that are here tonight, and we continue with the intern program, and it's a year and a half old now, and it just keeps going, and we've got a lot of success. So I want to thank the interns for that, and thank everybody, because we're getting some results for the public. It's a win for everybody. In the same time, tonight we've got, as I mentioned before, Renee Berlin and Jody Litvak, and they're going to talk about the East San Fernando Valley Corridor. Jody is the Director of Regional Communications for Metro, and when I knew her when she was a child, she was something in regional communications. But she's been a regional communicator for a long time. I just, from the days that we're told the Expo line would never happen. It didn't come from Jody. It's like I struggled in those days. And Renee Berlin is the Executive Officer of Transit Corridors and System-Wide Planning. So let's give them a big hand. Welcome.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bart, for including us. Can everybody hear me in the back? I use my mom voice. All right.
Just pretend you're mad at the kids and louder.
And it's
down, you got people trying to sleep.
And if you can't hear me, or just wave your hands. And I'm really impressed by sort of the range of different kinds of backgrounds and experiences in the room. Many of you are familiar faces, some of you are new, but I know you're all friends. So Renee and I are going to talk about the East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor project tonight. It's one of the Measure R projects, first decade Measure R project. It's on a very fast clip. I'm going to take you through sort of a little bit of the background and process stuff. Renee will discuss the alternatives being evaluated, and we're going to move pretty quickly here because it's a pretty sophisticated group, and I know you have a lot of questions. We are at the very beginning of the draft environmental analysis. Leading up to this, we spent about a year and a half doing some preliminary studies where we had a lot of meetings. For those of you who lived with me through the Purple Line Extension planning, we used to talk about our spaghetti map. We have a spaghetti map here as well. If you sort of overlay all the different alignments and routes and whatever that we studied, that's what's on the right-hand side. That ultimately got narrowed to 6 possible buildable alternatives for further study. And then in January of this year, we wrapped up the AA and concluded to move on with the draft EIS-EIR with the 2 required options, which Renee will talk about, as well as a bus rapid transit and light rail transit option for this corridor. I want to be clear, I understand I am in the presence and shadow of the great Bart Reed, who talks a lot about another project that continues, that covers this area and continues further south of Ventura and way further south. We are in communications with them, we are in cahoots with them, we are in coordination with them, but this project as it was put into the adopted long-range transportation plan, looks at the corridor from Ventura Boulevard north, as you see here. And again, this is something that the plan is to have something done before the end of this decade. All of these projects, as you know, in the environmental phase, you need to be clear why you're doing this. Is there a need for this? What's the purpose? So we want to improve north-south mobility. We obviously want to have more reliable operations and connection between key transit corridors and routes. We want to enhance accessibility, connectivity, you know all this stuff. One of the things I want to say about this is, I'll come back to that. It's coming up a little bit. So, as I said, this is on a very, very short time frame. We wrapped up the alternatives analysis in January. We're going to spend the next 2 years doing the draft and the final environmental, and move very quickly. The goal in the adopted long-range transportation plan is to measure our program is to have this project up and operating within 5 years. This is a super aggressive schedule. And again, we'll be talking to the public throughout. You see down here the City of LA logo, because this project is envisioned to operate on city-owned streets. We are in partnership with them. They own and operate those streets. Bart wanted to give you our background, so I'll do bits and pieces of that for those of you who went through the wars on the Wilshire bus lane with me. You know cooperation with the city is very important, owns and operates the streets. We're also cooperating closely with the city of San Fernando. So the purpose of the draft EIS-EIR is to really further refine down the alternatives that we will take you through, look at their possible benefits and impacts, at the end of which we will ask the Metro Board to select a locally preferred alternative. That's the option that will go through further analysis in the final EIS-EIR, at which point we'll respond to the comments we received from that official comment period when we release the draft, recommend a mitigation program and a project for construction. Bunch of issues have to be studied in an environmental analysis, so there will be chapters and sections in the report on all of these things. I just call them to your attention because, you know, if you're somebody who's really interested in, I don't know, paleontological resources, we'll have a section for you. As we go through all of these options, we have screening criteria, sifting criteria, sorting criteria, and they'll all be evaluated against these criteria. What are their travel and mobility benefits and impacts? How do they fare in terms of regional connectivity, cost effectiveness, all of these things. I don't need to read them off to you. I want to be clear. Your input is one of the factors. It's not the only factor, but public input is important. I'm going to turn it over to Renee for a moment. I thought I would have said something about this by now. So while she's getting her thoughts together, we are focusing on this corridor in the San Fernando Valley. We looked at other north-south corridors that are east of the Orange Line extension of Canoga. We looked as far east as Lancashire, I believe. Van Nuys Boulevard is the heaviest north-south corridor in the San Fernando Valley. It's the second heaviest transit line in the San Fernando Valley after the Orange Line. It's where the transit service suffers the greatest negative impacts from getting slowed down because of congestion, not being able to stick to schedule, reliability because of congestion. It is the seventh heaviest bus route in our entire metro district. That's where the need is the greatest. So after evaluating other north-south corridors, this is where we settled. And on that, I'll turn it over to Renee, and I'll be back at the end.
That's all right. Well, thank you all for coming out on Thursday night. Bart and I go way back. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be here. One of the things that Jody didn't mention, I don't know if she's going to mention it later on, but I will mention it now, is right now in terms of our schedule, we are in the scoping period for the environmental analysis. our scoping period closes on May 6th. So a lot of the questions you may have tonight, we can't answer because we're in the scoping process, so I don't want you to get frustrated or upset or whatever. But please be aware that we want to hear things. When we were early in the study, we were originally just looking along Van Nuys Boulevard because Sepulveda was a street that we had been looking at for bus speed improvements. As a result of public comment and things we heard, we expanded our study area early on to look at Sepulveda. We also were originally just going up to the Lakeview Terrace area off 210, and because of comments we heard, wanted to connect with the Silmar San Fernando Metro station. So we took a little break so that we could look at these things. This was in the alternative analysis stage. At the end of the alternative analysis stage, we said, yeah, Silmar San Fernando is a really, really good connection point with the Metrolink station and all the buses that come in there. However, Sepulveda, because of the things that Jody just said, Sepulveda did not rank as highly. And so we found that we would get most bang out of the buck and the most benefit for our transit users by focusing on Van Nuys. So just be aware that although we may not be able to answer questions tonight, we certainly hear what people have to say. So as Jody said, we have a very sophisticated audience here who know a lot about this. So as everybody knows, we are required to include in a draft environmental and environmental analysis the two required no-bill transportation systems management. I'm not going to go into any detail, but self-explanatory. We also looked at bus rapid transit, and we have one alternative that will be a bus rapid transit alternative that's mostly going to be an exclusive right-of-way. These are the operating characteristics of it. It could have the possibility of a single ride over the Sepulveda Pass on the top of our current 761 that goes over the hill. So that's an opportunity there. Because of the street width right now, we're looking at how we could either have the on-street parking, whether we restrict some parking and we include bicycle lane, because Van Nuys Boulevard is a backbone bicycle street in the city of LA's adopted bicycle network. So here's a little bit about the BRT alternative. It's going to be in mixed flow coming out of the Silmar San Fernando station. Then it comes down Van Nuys Boulevard for about 6.5 miles. And then in the southern terminus, we have three options. One, we could terminate at the Van Nuys Orange Line station. We could come over the Orange Line, go to the west on the Orange Line, and terminate at Sepulveda. We could come down Van Nuys and just flow, so then we would hook up to Ventura. And then we could also come down in a dedicated lane on Sepulveda and then hook up also. So those are the options we're looking at right now. The long-range plan, which is MTA's Bible, and it lists our priorities, and it's the sacred sequence, as we call it. And so, as Jody mentions, this project is an early project. It's in 2018 is our revenue service date. It's the first decade. But the long-range plan commits and Measure R, including in there the Measure R funds of $170.1 million. So that's all that's currently available for this project. The BRT alternative, this is based on numbers, 10%, 5% engineering of 250 to 520. If it turns out that the BRT is the locally preferred alternative and we do the final environmental document, on that alternative we could apply for federal small starts, and that could help with some good funding. We have our light rail alternative, basically 1 mile apart. I should mention that if we end up doing the BRT, it will be built to light rail standards so that we can convert later on. That's something we do. The stations are basically 1 mile apart. We found that with the BRT, we could use our existing maintenance facilities in the valley. We have 2 maintenance facilities currently. We do have excess capacity for the additional buses. However, if we go with light rail, we are going to require a new maintenance facility. So we're currently looking at sites, potential maintenance facility right now. It will require a transfer over the Spalding Pass to a bus or whatever becomes of the Spalding Pass project. And again, we have restricted right of way, so we're looking at the parking versus the bicycle lane. But the city informally has told us that bicycles right now are their priority. The LRT alternative pretty much follows the BRT. It's all in dedicated right of way, all the way down from the Metrolink station to Ventura Boulevard. The cost is about 1.8 to 2.3 billion. And again, we have 170, so we're looking at, we're doing engineering, we're refining the alternatives, so I look at, it's a big funding gap, but we'll get stuff in $218.
Is this primarily a grade, the LRT?
We are looking, running it through our grade separation policy, so right now those costs are based on. The Sepulveda Pass, Dave Meager was out here, I believe, earlier this year, I think it was in January or so, to talk about our Sepulveda Pass, the squiggly little line, purple line that you saw in the previous maps. This is also a Measure R project. It's 12 of 12 projects in the transit element of Measure R. Measure R provided about $1 billion, but we are putting together some other sources. But it's certainly with an opening year of 2039. That's within our long-range plan. Wait, let me finish. In December, our board did a systems planning study on this corridor. It's a 30-mile corridor, basically up to Silmar, San Fernando, Metrolink Station, all the way down to the airport. So it would connect with the Expo line, it would connect with the Purple Line extension, the Orange Line, the airport connector. So we basically found as a result of that high-level evaluation, 6 concepts that could be implemented in the corridor. All of them definitely more than $1 billion. They range from low-level to high-level costs, with looking at a BRT running on the median shoulders, which I think was $145 million, all the way up to a tunnel for that would have both rail and highway.
Yeah.
That was $30 billion for the whole length of it, about $16 billion through the 9 miles through the Sepulveda Pass. Our board, similar to your reaction, was we don't really want to wait that long. I mean, and we understand that there's priorities and the sacred sequence and et cetera, But we think that this corridor here is prime for a public-private partnership, and that the private sector will want to invest and we could use their dollars to deliver the project. It's not a funding mechanism. Public-private partnership, as most of you probably know, is really a delivery mechanism. So our board directed us to look at to evaluate the public-private partnership feasibility for not only the Sepulveda Pass project, but to look at the East San Fernando Valley project and the airport connector, which Roderick Diaz and Lisa, with our staff, and Lisa Tripoletti with Lawwell was here several months ago talking about this project. So we are currently doing that. In March, our board approved a contract amendment to our existing consultant, our existing P3 consultant. There will be an industry forum to determine the private sector's interest in all 3 sections of the project. That will be coming up next week. So stay tuned. Looking at it, and we realize that people don't want to wait till 2039 because we'll be here anyway.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean in the ground, it means who will be at MTA.
All right, so I'm going to wrap this up, and then we'll turn it over to you. As Reedy said, we are in the scoping period. This is your chance to help shape the study, as Renee said. We can't answer your questions now. The purpose of the study is to do the analysis and find out what it says. So if there's particular issues you want the study to evaluate, or things you want us to look at, tell us now. So ask us those questions, and we'll say, thanks so much. Wait till we come out with the study, and there you'll find your answer. You may like the answer, you may not like the answer. But this is your chance to get your questions to us to be included in the study. Are there questions that you have about the modes? Are there questions you have about travesty, for transit, for cars, for carrier pigeons, I don't know, reliability, station locations, the maintenance yard locations, all of that stuff. This is your chance to get that on the record. You have about a week and a half to do that. You can submit comments to us by May 6th is the close of the scoping period. So if there's things you want the study to evaluate, get them to us. This is not one of our official scoping meetings, so we'll listen to you, but please send them in to us all these ways. I'll leave this up. This is, and it's also on our website. You can send them by mail, you can phone them in, you can send us an email. You can go to our website and contact us. You can text us. For the first time ever, we are also accepting formal comments via social media. So if you go to the Facebook page, you can post on the wall. Don't post your formal comment there. If you go to the Facebook page, up at the top, there will be a little widget you can click on to submit your formal scoping comments here. So do that, and those will come to us. Or if you can find a way to boil down your thoughts into 140 characters or less, minus the hashtag. If you use that hashtag EastSFV scoping, we will capture that and include it as a part of the official scoping comments by midnight, week after next. Okay, May 6th. We held scoping meetings in March. The third of those meetings was held on March 21st. I forget which of the schools in the valley we were at that moment. But we have a Ustream channel, Ustream TV/channel/SFV. If you go there and you want to watch me talking about it and the other people and hear what the questions were there, and see the presentation, he was there and he asked questions. You're welcome to do that. And I think, yeah, that's it. Let me go back. So I'm going to leave that up. We will stand up here for a little while. We will listen to your questions and comments. We will probably say, wait for the study.
We take notes.
Clarify, well, not, she's, okay. We'll sort of kind of take notes as best we can.
But
again,
they're not the official.
They're not the official
comments.
Yeah, official comments gotta come. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 7 ways you can get us comments. And if you can figure out how to get us something by carrier pigeon, I'll take it. How's that? So with that, we'll open it up to you guys. Gentleman in the back, I saw you first.
Oh, sure.
Right, sure. Tell me your name again.
My name is Don Bing, I'm in Ventura County, but I didn't, obviously that's why I'm here, it's my interest. If you go BRT, I don't know if the orange line is gas powered or
CNG.
what about overhead electric, either currently or for the line you're envisioning here?
With LRT, it would be overhead catenary.
I understand, but,
Talking about the bus?
trolley buses, essentially.
Yeah, we haven't done that in Los Angeles, but if that's something you'd like us to look at in the study, send it in and we'll certainly take a look at that. As I'm standing here today, I'm not even sure what the trade-off would be, but if you'd like us to look at that, we certainly could. Okay? Yes, sir.
How dependent are you on federal funding for doing this project? And given the current state of the U.S. House of Representatives and its administration, what likelihood do you think that we would have of securing that funding?
I'm not going to answer the second question at all because I have no idea. The first question is, as Renee indicated, based on this current level of engineering, and this means the cost projections are very preliminary. Everything, the engineering and the cost projections will get defined in the next stage, which means they could go up, they could go down. we'll have a better idea of what we're dealing with. This is not unlike, no, I see you on there. This is not unlike any of our other projects that we really can't go after funding until we have the project better defined. If it's a BRT project, we think we have a shot at bringing it in a way to qualify for the federal small starts project. If it's a more expensive project, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of interest right now, as you all know, around Los Angeles, in finding all kinds of different ways to fund it. So the answer to your question is, I don't know.
But-
And then Renee, did you want to call?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing. One of the things that our agency does, it's not a policy, but it's a practice, is that when we are environmentally clearing a project, we do both the NEPA document and the SEQA document. So it provides us the flexibility of going after federal funds. There always seems to be new programs coming out. For example, on our Crenshaw project, which was one of my projects, we were able to get a TIFIA loan and a Tiger grant. That's mostly funded with the Measure R, but because of the flexibility of doing both federal and state, it allows us to go after grants that may not even be a vision anyone's eyeline.
But given that you have several transit projects going now, the Gold Line extension, a possible future Gold Line extension, the south.
There are only two projects right now that are competing for federal new starts matching funds, okay? The Purple Line extension and the regional connector. Any of these new things like the TIFIA loans or the bonds that they're trying to push through America Fast Forward, we don't know yet. We're watching all of that, okay?
But also, we have a long-range plan, and our long-range plan has a financial element. So we have a whole department that puts together how each of the projects will be funded at the appropriate time. This project has a way to go until we get the cost numbers solidified, but they mesh together the dollars and they're able to forecast how we can make things happen.
Okay, come on, let me, this side of the aisle. Anyone over here? Okay, one over here. I know we'll come back to this, go ahead.
If no build is chosen, does that 170 million go into any sort of restricted pool that can only be used for certain things, or does it just go into the ether?
The agreement in the long-range transportation plan, and Renee talked about the sacred schedule, the sacred divvying up of funds, I guess, for lack of a better word, is if there are funds, cost savings, or funds not used, or whatever, they have to stay in the same sub-area. And there's also within Measure R some restrictions. If you all remember from Measure R, there was the pie chart of how much money goes to the cities and how much money goes to operations and how much money goes to this and how much money goes to that. There are restrictions on moving money from transit money to highway and highway money to transit. So within that, there's some compliance on that. So that's the, whether the project doesn't get built or there's cost savings or whatever, that's what would happen with any leftover money. So in the back and then this gentleman in the black shirt right here. And then I saw you in the back, but I'm going to come up here first. So 1, 2, 3.
So I was actually kind of wondering about the options that you said, that if it does get created into a BRT, that it's capable of then being later on, if desired, to be made into a LRT. On option 3, would that still be capable to go all the way through Van Nuys and then do that turn to be able to be converted into later into
You mean if we take it down Sepulveda to Sepulveda and Ventura?
Yes.
That's certainly one of the things we're going to be looking at.
The reason why I'm asking this is because that area is being redeveloped at this moment, and as it gets redeveloped, there's going to be more use in that area. Where the estimated for one of the developers is that they're estimating 1,470 more jobs in that area, and obviously there's a lot of individuals that are acknowledging this and seeing benefits for their own companies as well, for having their employees and whatnot be able to live in that area and commute, and not have to commute that much. One last thing, is there any possible way that if that line does get extended in a form of a LRT, would that be able to also connect to the Sepulveda path and hopefully one day be made into one single line, or would it still be cut into two?
Okay, so
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, regarding the growth in the ridership in that area, again, we will be, the numbers that you saw in the alternatives for ridership and travel time and all that, those will all be revised and updated in the next phase. Right now, given that this project is slated to open in 2018, the Sepulveda Pass project is slated to open in 2039, what I can tell you is if and when this project in fact opens in 2018, if it's a bus, it can continue over the Sepulveda Pass. If it's rail, there will be nothing in Ventura for it to connect to based on the current schedule. Will it be able to connect in the future? That is everybody's hope and dream and vision, okay? But I will not give you a definite yes or no, because that's not where we are.
And
Okay?
other connection.
The other thing too is that, as part of this, because we are coordinating with the Sepulveda Pass project, we would look at where's the logical connection point.
Right.
So is it at Ventura Boulevard? I don't know. Is it someplace else?
Is it at Ventura Sepulveda, is it Ventura Van Nuys, or is it someplace further north? Okay, this gentleman, and the gentleman in the back here, and then this lady with the sunglasses on her head.
Two minor comments, they're not really questions, but in relation to what the guy said about the Sepulveda Pass and so forth. As far as I can see, that new HOV lane that's being built through the Sepulveda Pass would be perfect for a light rail line in the future, to go without having to build any tunnel. You know, the traffic's still kept to the side. The other thing too is, this is just another comment. When I saw this, even on the internet, East San Fernando Valley corridor, I thought to myself, this is really the Central Valley as much as, I don't know, if you call it 405, the division between East and West, then okay. But it looks to me like it's right down the center pretty much,
Well,
not the east.
and I think
But it's a naming question, I think.
Yeah, it is a naming question, and we argue about that all the time. I think at the time the name came about, it's because we were looking at something that was going to be east of the Sunoco line.
Okay.
So that's where it came from. I personally agree with you, but, you know,
Yeah.
arose by any other name.
Yeah, they
All
changed
right.
the blue line to the gold line eventually, so.
Hey, listen, we just changed West Side Subway Extension to Purple Line. I don't want to hear anyone else. In the back here.
After I read the study and I see that you have on the study that out of the north section of the study, there's 19,000 university trips. Do you have that more defined to which universities they're going? Want to see if,
I don't know, I don't think we do at this stage right now, but that's certainly, if you want us to do that, you should ask us to do that officially by
Okay.
sending it in. And by the way, Bart pointed out that he handed all of these out to you, which, and there's information in here, all of this information is in here, so you can take this with you and send us your comments by May 6th, okay?
Thank you.
And then this lady here, and then yes, I see you in the back.
Just two things. Will there ever, could there ever be a light rail on Chandler which they should have done?
Could there ever? Sure, ever, sure.
My lifetime.
Well, you don't look a day over 26, so, you know, anything's possible, it only takes
I
time
mean,
and
it's
money.
only a dream, and the other, the thing here is, I just wanted to know about Van Nuys Boulevard. And you said that there would be also parking on Van Nuys Boulevard.
What we were trying to say is, given the width of Van Nuys Boulevard now, we don't want to have to narrow the sidewalks and do all of that stuff. So if you put dedicated bus or light rail in there, you can either keep the parking on the side, or you can put bike lanes in. There's not sufficient width for both the new transit project and bike lanes and parking. So these are things we are going to evaluate in the next phase. Now, just because there may not be parking on directly on Van Nuys Boulevard doesn't mean, and this isn't true, you know, there's parts of Van Nuys where it's much wider. I mean, it's a pretty wide street everywhere, but there's some areas where it's where it's even wider. You know, we are going to go out in the next phase, and we're going to take a look at the parking utilization, you know, in each area, what kind of parking is available off the street, et cetera, et cetera. So, no decisions have been made yet, but that's a great question. Okay? here, and then we're gonna come up front, because I have somebody on this side of the aisle.
Jody, you mentioned briefly the widest part of Van Nuys Boulevard is the strongest auto interest there is to veering things toward bus rather than a light rail, because they need to unload their hundreds of planet-destroying cars in the middle of Van Nuys Boulevard. Now, I'm asking you if
They
you can...
need to?
You too?
They need, you said need,
Me?
yeah, you said they needed to.
They need to, because they need that shot of
Just
greed.
trying to clarify, right?
Greed shots, right? So if you can negotiate with them to load their cars from the side so that it might be closer to their business than taking away the people's right to move along light rail. There are
Okay.
special negotiations, in other words, I'm trying to draw your attention to, that will keep them alive on life support, put it that
Okay,
way.
thank you.
Submit a comment.
Over here. You asked, no, you asked already, okay, go ahead.
Could you speak a little bit to how the P3 process might work, and are there examples in Southern California?
The P3 process, right now, I believe there's the 91 polling down in Orange County. What we try to do is you try to find a private interest, private sector business, be it a builder that has a banker and, you know, blah, 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 who will pay to build the project earlier in return for revenues from tolls, fares, or whatever, so that there's a revenue stream that will reimburse them for the earlier money.
And the corridor itself is meant to be a light rail corridor, is that right? To the-
Has not yet been decided.
That's not, so whatever it is, the operator would,
I think what you're gonna have happen in this case, and, you know, we're a planning agency, so we're used to kind of doing the planning process first to define what the project is within certain parameters. I think, what the P3 effort is gonna do for now is gonna go to the private sector and say, okay, here's this 30-mile corridor. And we thought of this, and we thought of that, and we thought of the other thing, and we don't know, we haven't environmentally cleared anything, but private sector, please tell us along the entire length of this corridor or within a portion of this corridor, among these various alternatives, is there something for which you think you can deliver something to Greater Los Angeles sooner, and you can also make some return on it? And we will see what they say. We will see what they say.
The idea is to eventually do like a business case analysis with them and then enter into a concessionaire agreement, a project development agreement, so that they would then, everything would be solidified as to when things happen. They could end up paying for things that we would normally pay for just to expedite the delivery.
And some aspects of this could be privatized and some not. Yes, ma'am.
To that point, did you happen to see the LA Times case today about that entrepreneur Elon Musk? We saw it, where people are, I guess he really wants 5 to be widened faster, and maybe he's somebody we could put up to help with transit.
Well, give him a call. I saw you over there, back, yeah, check shirt in the back, and I'm gonna come over here, then Alex, then over here.
I wonder whether there aren't any more options to study. And, you know, if you travel around the world, there's so many really neat streetcars that look too futuristic. I mean, they're very comfortable. They seem to coexist very easily in the city with a much lighter touch than what we are doing. And I wonder why they are never studied. I mean, the options that we have are BRT, which is what a full city in Brazil has pioneered, right? I think we should indicate that. Or it's a train that looks like an overstruck from an ex-communist country.
Well, comrade. We actually, remember that spaghetti map?
Yeah.
Not only does that show different routes, well, it shows different routes, it doesn't show that we actually did look at streetcar, and it didn't have, streetcar is actually slower running and smaller than light rail, and so it didn't offer any advantages or significant advantages over BRT. BRT, and it was significantly more expensive because you have to put in a track to build a new yard. And so we actually screened that out between the alternative analysis and the phase we're in now. But if you want us to look at streetcar or something else that you want us to suggest, and you want us to look at it again, send it in and we'll take a look. Okay? There was, I know, check shirt, and then Alex, and then somebody else, but.
Just a couple quick questions. The exclusive right-of-way, I assume, would then take a lane of traffic on, or 2 lanes of traffic on Van Nuys? You have exclusive right-of-way?
Yeah, we would have to do some rejiggering of lanes.
And in your public comment period, what kind of reaction did you get from the businesses along the Van Nuys corridor? Was it mixed?
You know, we got stuff all over the place. One of the things I'll tell you, and I learned this a lot when I was working on the Wilshire BRT project, is, and I don't know what the results are going to show here yet, but everybody looks at, okay, let's say you've got 3 lanes of traffic. People tend to assume that, one, the traffic is evenly distributed across the 3 lanes, and we found that that was not true, and that if you eliminated that 1 lane of traffic, that it would take up all of the other capacity in the other lanes, okay? And we found out that, you know, that wasn't true either. And the third thing we found out on the Wilshire BRT project was that at rush hour, which is all that project is going to be, it's going to be 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, 3 in the afternoon and 2 in the morning, something like that. Is that we're actually carrying more people at rush hour in the buses on Wilshire than in the cars. So I don't know, you know, if those things equate to Van Nuys, but again, you know, yes, either of these projects will involve taking a lane of mixed flow traffic, and we're going to have to talk about what that means for cars, for people, for the capacity of the remaining lanes, for how the vehicles distribute themselves across the lanes. But that's a great question.
Okay, another quick question about historically, do you know why the Sepulveda corridor is so slow in being studied? Why is it number 12 on the list? I mean, why wasn't it studied earlier in the?
Go ahead, but, you know, there was earlier studies. We've been looking at the Sepulveda the past 3 years, and we have several studies that we've done, that as Jody will tell you on the Measure R and
And,
on long-range
you know,
plan.
you guys understand when the board gets together and says, okay, looking at over 30 years, we can reasonably project that there's X amount of money available. And there are wants and needs around the county. And they work it out, you know, and everybody has to get a piece, and the different modes have to get a piece, and I wasn't in the back room when this was discussed, but the board, in its infinite wisdom, adopted this as the sacred schedule. And they can change it, but it's a very difficult thing for them to do. Okay? Alex, and then you up here.
Okay, well, first I want to thank National staff for being here. It's always good to see you. We're working on this much needed project. So the question is, if it is an LRT, and I think that's the only mode that
If it is or it isn't.
If it is, the LRT, and I think it's the only mode that will handle faster from all those national passengers. Have you considered studying the southern terminus not terminated at Ventura, but just going a little bit further to Sherman Oaks Gallery, because Sherman Oaks Gallery is a very busy intersection.
Well, you should send that in and ask that we do that.
I already did.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, have you considered or not at all?
You know, at a very preliminary stage, I think, you know, rail lines, they don't like making turns. I mean, you do it when you absolutely need to. And again, one of the things for whatever the southern terminus is and whatever this project ends up being is what makes sense for its connection for a future Sepulveda Pass project. That's a great question.
Can I answer from my point of view?
No. It's your party, go ahead.
My party. Well, it's important to understand here that everybody here is articulate, has the documents where you can write, and what the goal is of this meeting is to have you donate a letter to Metro with your opinion. There's no
questions.
There's no right or wrong if you believe that this thing should get down to Ventura and Van Nuys and go over to Sepulveda, then that's it. The point is that we've got 50, 60 people in the room. We can get 50 or 60 letters in here. It A, shows there's a passion and an appetite for the San Fernando Valley. If you have questions about light rail in your letter or favor one or the other, same thing. It shows that you have a passion about the project. The project doesn't go forward when there's no public support. The project doesn't go ahead when all the NIMBYs of the Sherman Oaks homeowners show up and say, we shouldn't have a $2 billion project in the San Fernando Valley because it's not going anywhere. And even if I turn around and say to him or them, it's going to carry 37,000 people a day on light rail, it's about 15 miles long, and I said, look at the comparison. It's $2 billion on Crenshaw, goes 9 miles, going to carry 9,500 people, and they're getting a light rail line, there's federal funds and all, and you don't want a $2 billion starter project in the valley. That's generally when, as I mentioned earlier, when Alan Robbins said, start North Hollywood to Universal, it had some sort of effect that actually got the subway to the valley. The point is that if we don't have you guys writing, then they've come here and it's like, did any trees fall in the building? No, because, so it's all about what you say. There's no right or wrong answers at this point. We personally, some of us may have something that we favor, but right now the goal is to generate out letters because every public member counts. If you're in the construction industry or the building trades or the designers or architects or engineers, or you do pre-construction engineering and all, having a $2 billion project means that you or your children are going to have work. And so that's why it's very important from the angles of better community, better environment, you name any kind of angle that you want, write the letters, it's in the brochures. That's what we really want to generate out tonight. There's no right or wrong answers, but you can ask the questions. If she can't answer them, when they take off, their child care is going to be up soon, they're going to take off, and I can answer the questions. But right now, it's generating letters that really makes a difference. So Farouk's got some business for himself and his children in the next 10 years or 20 years, and that's what it's all about, the next generation. So friends are the design railroad terminals can have some work for their company. That's what it's all about. So
This guy's been waiting patiently, he was next. Go ahead.
I want to know.
And then we'll take like one or two more after this.
I want to know about the concern about Van Nuys Amtrak and Metro station. How do you know if this converted to a light road would be an elevation that we can pass or so? Or not?
Did you hear the question? Because his voice was kind of like, he was asking about how, if this is light rail, what would happen at the Van Nuys Metrolink station, over, under, through, how they would interact. And the answer is, we don't know yet, okay? But it's a great question.
Yeah. Because,
all right.
Like, I've been thinking because I always pass there every day, because like going underground for me kind of too dangerous because there's a lot of cars passing by, and then for me, you would never know if there's gonna be a car accident or anything like that right next to me. So I'm just saying.
So what I want to tell you is whatever Metro does,
right.
the number one thing always, always, always is safety, okay? My friends in Beverly Hills don't believe me.
Also, I have another question also about noise, because there's a lot of residents in Denver City, and then because most of the residents are Hispanics in those areas, and they're gonna be complaining more about noise if there's a light rail, they're gonna be like they haven't sleep because of the noise and the
We will be looking, remember that long list of all the things we're going to evaluate and filled up the whole slide. Noise and vibration is one of them, and we'll certainly be taking a look at what the impacts are, and certainly if there's any impacts that exceed certain standards, we will have to mitigate to bring things to the standard if all possible. Okay, I'm going to take two more, you and then you, and then Renee and I are going to go home.
Okay. Real quickly,
Not together.
can we write things past May 6th, or is that the?
You can write things, you can give us input throughout the process.
Okay.
If, however, I want to be clear, if there is something you want the study to evaluate, that I have to have by May 6th, okay? After that, I will look at it, and if it's something that somebody has already suggested to us, I'll go, nice idea, but we gotta move along. We gotta get this up and operating by 2018. Okay?
And isn't light rail a whole lot quieter than buses?
Why don't we wait for what the analysis shows?
Okay.
All right? Last
Comes
one.
on the bus. Okay. A couple of quick comments. Curitiba has the highest income of any place in Brazil. It is a beautiful, prosperous, thriving place. And as far as capacity, on the heavier BRT lines in Curitiba, they are carrying more passengers an hour, actually several times passengers an hour peak direction than the red line is carrying. My question has to do with BRT, and one thing that you can do with BRT that you can't do with rail is have buses enter or leave at any point. And MTA has never seemed to be interested in this on the Orange Line or even on some of the commuter type of rapid bus. Does MTA have a policy about that, or is that something that is worth suggesting for study?
I really don't know.
We didn't have it back then.
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever looked at it, you may want to submit a comment.
Is that it?
Have they thought about putting solar panels on top of light rail or solar panels on top of buses? I mean, it seems we're trying to keep it clean and self-supporting, and it just seems like those would be possibilities, save money, empower.
So you'll include that in your letter?
Okay.
I just wonder if everyone realizes the reason why Van Nuys Boulevard is so wide in the first place, there was a rail line on it for quite a long time. Chandler as well.
No, it's Vineland.
That's correct.
I understand, I'm talking about Van Nuys Boulevard though.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
they gotta rush out to do childcare. Let's give everybody a